Martin J., thank you so much for joining us on the program. Erdogan has said that Khashoggi was killed in a vicious, violent manner, and he said a number of times that it was pre-planned. How credible do you think that statement is, given that he didn't put forth any concrete evidence at the same time?
Well, we have to be very careful, don't we? I mean, much of this entire case rests on some of these more critical elements of evidence which we haven't seen and we haven't heard. So I think, in one respect, this plays against the Saudis because that gives them the time and the confidence to carry on with this ludicrous miscommunication campaign of theirs, where even leading royals are contradicting one another. But on the other hand, that puts pressure on the Turkish leader to finally deliver. I mean, today was not the bombshell that we expected it to be. We expected hard evidence, the three critical components, I think, where the body is, which he raised, the audio recordings, and even any equipment like bone-cutting devices. You know, this is what really the whole case hinges on, and we're not seeing that at the moment. I think what today was quite a clever and quite a masterly piece of geopolitical leverage. I think your colleague is right to say that it was a political speech aimed at the Saudis, but I would go one step further and I would say that was actually aimed at the Saudi king, to actually make it clear to the king that this debacle, whereby the Turks have got the Crown Prince, the Saudi Crown Prince, exactly where they want him, on his back foot, can go on for a very long time indeed. And that is only going to create instability in terms of foreign investment, which the Saudis may be hoping to get at some point, even though things are looking very bad on that side. But also there is this international idea which is being bandied about, which Erdogan touched on, which was an impartial investigation. The UN have mentioned they might be interested in doing such a thing. We've had statements from France, Germany and Britain in the last few days saying what the Saudis are saying is not credible. I wonder whether the impartial investigation, international investigation, maybe at UN level, may be the next step in this case. But what I'm seeing and what I'm reading with Erdogan's speech is that he's very happy in where he is now. He's prepared to drag it out as long as possible. He's holding his hand out for a deal with Saudi Arabia, which he's not getting. Several analysts and well-placed people who I know are closer to him have told me that that's what's really been taking the time, is that he's been asking the Saudis through back channels to come closer. He may well think that an international investigation which drags out over many weeks and months and possibly even years. I mean, look at the Hariri investigation that's going on now in Europe. He may well think that that is the way to bring the Saudis closer into his fold to get what he wants from them.
Now, the last thing we've heard from the Saudi officials is that this was an accident. It happened because of a fistfight that escalated in the consulate, and that there are people being held responsible. And Erdogan did say today that he doesn't doubt the king's sincerity, but at the same time, he called it a political murder. So where's the difference there?
Well, I think he's given the leverage to Mohammed bin Salman there to actually still continue with this idea that MBS can be given some distance. I mean, that is really what everyone's trying to do. It's all, you know, you've got this international power gamble at the moment between America, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Each one wants a deal from the other one. And I think what Erdogan was saying was, we can still work with this idea, if you wish, that Mohammed bin Salman was actually not directly responsible for what happened, but on my terms. So that was another key message which I think will resonate through Riyadh in the right now, is that can we work with the Turks on the basis that we take for granted as a diplomatic comfort, if you like, to Saudi Arabia, that at least the Crown Prince was not part of it. In my personal view is that it doesn't really matter, because whichever way you look at this, it looks pretty bad against Mohammed bin Salman. If he wasn't actually personally behind it, if he didn't actually commission it himself, but he left it to one of his top people, Al-Qahtani, for example, who is in the news as being the one who orchestrated the whole thing from Skype, from Riyadh. That doesn't really paint a very good picture for him or the country that he's ruling at the moment, because it makes it look as though he's not even in control of his own henchmen. I think it's inconceivable to assume that a guy like Al-Qahtani could mastermind the whole thing from beginning to end and all the ghastly details of it without having the absolute support and green light from his master. So from my own perspective, I don't think we should humour that idea that this was an operation that went wrong and that in fact it wasn't even Mohammed bin Salman who was part of it. I don't accept that one personally.
Martin, my name is Ilya and I'm here with Jacqueline in the studio. Would you agree that in this particular case, Mr. Erdogan was also sending a message to the rest of the international community? And how do you think they'll accept that?
Well, I think that he's sensing a momentum. And I think he realizes that if you look at the relationship between Turkey and America and how that spun on a sixpence just just a week or so ago, and now relations are much better between Erdogan and Trump. Erdogan must be sensing the impossible position that Donald Trump is in now, because from the very beginning it's been very clear Trump's entire Middle East campaign, his entire anti-Iran agenda has been based on selling to the American public, people who don't really understand the Middle East, a lot of blue-collar workers, that these people in the Middle East are our allies, the Saudis, we need them, we need to work with them against the threat, in inverted commas, of Iran. That's going to be really hard now to sell to the media and to Trump's support base. There must be many millions. The nightmare scenario that Trump has is that millions of his own supporters start saying, well, we don't really understand the Middle East, but aren't you backing the wrong people? I mean, when you're talking about human rights and terrorism, I mean, these people who are in bed with us are apparently just kidnapping and dismembering people, and shouldn't there be a human rights problem there? So I think Erdogan is sensing that Trump is going to have to do something. He cannot sustain this ridiculous support. I mean, what's been buzzing around Twitter in the last few days, you must have seen it. Everybody is saying nobody in the whole world is buying what the Saudis are putting out now except Donald Trump. That's got to end. And I think in the next few days and few hours you will see a different tone from Donald Trump. This thing is bigger than him. And he is already now suffering from a certain amount of groundswell in his own country from media and also from Congress, who are asking themselves, do we really need to be so close? Do we really need these people to be allies if they're going to behave like that? So Erdogan is holding out. He's trying to help Donald Trump. The three of them really need to get together and work out how they can actually diffuse this situation if they want to stay as all equal allies for the foreseeable future. But I don't see that happening. I see the Saudis just constantly digging themselves deeper and deeper into a hole. And if rumours are to be believed, which are being leaked by the Le Figaro, the conservative French newspaper, that there is already talk within the House of Saud of Mohammed bin Salman's brother to possibly take the throne, take the Crown Prince position, not immediately, but at a certain point in the next couple of years, to ease him into it, because you've got to put yourself in a position of Saudi Arabia. Its failed IPO for its own oil company is really affecting its own economy. It had Mohammed bin Salman and his whole raison d'etre was to modernize the country by 2030. They need $100 billion. The irony of this whole story is that Saudi Arabia doesn't have $100 billion to spend on reform and making itself more attractive to long-term international investment, because it spends all that money on American arms, fighting a phony war against Iran, which doesn't really need to be doing. So to go back full circle to what you said, I think Erdogan understands the whole geopolitics of the situation, but I think it's also really important for people out there watching who may not completely understand the relationship between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. These are frenemies at best. We can't call them full-on enemies, because they're not. But the relationship between these two countries also plays a huge factor in what's going on right now. Erdogan has ambitions of making Turkey a regional power with its own hegemony. It's a key partner with Qatar. It's got very good relations with Iran. And it's also a friend of the Muslim Brotherhood. These are all red flags for the Saudis. These are reasons why Saudi Arabia hates Turkey, for all these reasons together. I'm being told that Erdogan's people have flouted the idea to the Saudis, hey, help us with this idea, help us develop our own regional hegemony, and that was rejected by the Saudis, and that's why you've got this delay, this impasse at the moment, because both the Saudis and the Turkish administration, the Erdogan administration, are looking now to see, well, what's our next move? They're not going to do anything until they hear the next word from Trump. because Trump will determine that whether we take this debacle up to the next level and we talk about international investigations on a UN level, or it can be diffused and we can try and do our best to save the best of a worst situation, and that may well mean Mohammed bin Salman remains Crown Prince in a country which I would estimate as a geopolitical expert is drifting more and more away from America and more into the arms of Russia.
Martin J., investigative journalist, thank you so much for joining us on the program and breaking down this story with us.